is actually
My bad.
the WNBA Players Association Vice President. So you're the voice of the players, which I love.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just a bunch of, I mean, we had so much fun. We had a call this week, and it was like nonstop. First of all, you guys were like a hot mess on the phone.
We are totally a hot mess.
Full disclosure, it was literally Chiney's first full day in LA. She recently got traded to the Los Angeles Sparks. And so we were driving from her physical to another meeting, and she was messing up the navigation. But anyway.
They're like, you missed exit, and we're like trying to walk through we're lost, and you hear the GPS yelling in the background. I'm like,
but she was the one taking all the wrong turns.
Okay, because you didn't have your car shipped to LA yet. Anyways, sorry, we digress.
Allison, I want to start with you because, I mean, first of all, it intrigued me, and it did even when I was asking you on the call, but the 22 years old, I feel like it's hard for women in the space of sports agency in the beginning, but the fact that you came fresh out of college, out of Brown, and this is what you wanted to get into, why?
Yeah, so my long story short, I'm very fortunate that my uncle, Lon Rosen, has been in the sports business for a very long time. He's currently the executive vice president and CMO of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I was really lucky to have grown up close to him, where I started interning when I was in high school. And so definitely not a normal trajectory in terms of being in high school and hanging around a WNBA team, and started learning basically from there. So I think I had a unique idea that I knew I was gonna go in the direction of being an agent. I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I wanna hang out with players, like let me go be an agent. I really grew up on the business side of sports.
And you played?
Short-lived career.
Well, she was a one-hit wonder.
Here comes the troll. Yep, 1 year, we were 2-26 at Brown, pretty miserable year, but I loved Brown, so.
And what do you always say? You always say.
I'm 5'8", white and Jewish, so my career was always destined to be on the business side. Sinead knows all my lines. I know hers too.
Facts.
Sinead, I love though the way that you described, you're like two young women walking into these huge corporate rooms, whatever it might be in the business end, and you guys kind of being kids together, you know, and young women, navigating it together.
A lot of the women like yourself that are doing things, breaking barriers in this industry, I'm just dumbfounded by. And one of them happens to be her clients, Lisa Leslie. So Lisa Leslie, we argue about when I first met her, and this is what you're alluding to. Yeah, she's way older than me. She's 29.
Yep.
I'm 27.
I was a senior when she was a freshman.
There you go. There's some differences there. But I just realized with women's basketball, and with women's basketball, there hasn't been much creativity towards how we approach our careers. So no matter how great you do, you could be a WNBA champion, an Olympian, how far will that take you? And I think that's why a lot of women's basketball players sort of look now beyond and are creative with their careers outside of just what they do specifically with sport. So I chose someone that we can go 50-50, okay? But
let's be honest, our meals are mostly at Chipotle.
Okay, calm down. It's not.
That's
not the
her preference,
this
not
is
mine.
This is why I really enjoy our relationship, because we're both young, but the hardest thing for me is my career rapidly accelerated at ESPN, and there were those. Calm down. Oh. There were some times where sometimes I wanted to have the answer straight to the top, like who is the head of this department, who is the corporate leader here, and in the same way I was determined with basketball and also my career at ESPN to literally not be afraid of walking up to anyone and learning. And so we'd go and meet maybe as an associate producer, and next thing you know, we met the head producer, and next thing you know, we met the coordinating producer, and we built our own relationships that were different, but they were extremely authentic to us. And so that's why it was very important, because we were learning as we were going, and we just sort of approach the industry by that standard and that model.
And I think our personalities match and our work ethic matches, which helps a lot.
Opposites, if you can't tell.
Right. No, at the end of the day, I mean, we both outwork people, and we hustle, and we try to do things the right way. And so, sorry, you're supposed to moderate.
No, I can't imagine actually being on the opposite end of the table with you two. Trying to, literally negotiating and being like you two walk in the room, and right now you're just no. I mean, first of all, you're arguing with each other, then you're trying to make points, and then I feel like it works too because it allows you to come out, and even when you're not in the room, her representing you. And something that, I know you're dealing with now, new trade, going to LA. We've been talking about this too a little bit, just in understanding the whole athlete, which I feel like disrupt the game by understanding the definition of that is one of the best things about you is that you're not just a basketball player. But Chiney first, above everything else?
I'll explain the context, and you can do the like X's and O's.
Knock yourself out.
So I was just fortunate, and this is why I always tell people be yes woman, because for those who don't know, but I assume everyone knows, WNBA players tend to go play overseas in the off season, right? You can make upwards of 10, 11 times your WNBA salary overseas in, Russia or China or Italy or someplace like that. And for me, I had two major injuries, right knee microfracture surgery and left Achilles. Both of those happened while I was by myself in Italy and by myself in China, very similar to what happened to Breanna Stewart, right? And during those times, I was fortunately able to be drafted to Connecticut. And in Connecticut, there's not much to do besides work and work out. So ESPN being in our backyard, I met Lisa Stokes, who's here today, and I call her my fairy god sister, who I did the car wash at ESPN. And then after that, it was a summer period where I'm in Connecticut training or rehabbing, and they're looking for fresh new voices at ESPN. So I was called up to do a couple of shows, and fortuitously over the next few years, I realized that this is something I'm interested in, largely because I can't play basketball 24/7. My body just can't take that. So I realized that, okay, maybe to get reps in this industry, which is all key, I'll find ways with ESPN to see if I really enjoy broadcasting. So I started off with but before that, I was doing Pac-12 Network, doing stuff with Uninterrupted, and long story short, during my injuries, I really found an opportunity to find another career. And I'm just so grateful because at the time, and that's why I say, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. Every opportunity I got with ESPN, I treated it like a game day. Like I come in prepared, as you alluded to during your keynote. I just really attacked the opportunity largely because it was like a bonus to my life. And I loved it and it was fun. And while I couldn't compete on the court, this is a new way for me to compete. And so I was so lucky and fortunate to start off, calling games, and next thing pivot to anchoring SportsCenter Africa. So pretty much what you see Sage Steele and Kevin Nagandi do on the 6 o'clock SportsCenter. I was doing that every morning for the millions throughout Africa, learning different reps in the business. And then being in-house in Connecticut, people, and obviously giving hot takes on Twitter, they found out, well, occasionally, and I toned those down.
Wait, just to interrupt, Chiney, I think she brushes aside all the work it takes to get where she was. I mean, she cold auditioned for SportsCenter Africa. Like we figured out a way to get to the right person, largely through Lisa Stokes. I don't know where she is, but she was basically our in-house. Like, who do we go to? How do we make this work? And Chiney flew across the country, literally to Connecticut, to cold audition and figured it out. And then went.
Yeah, I felt like a hot mess, let me just tell you. We joked about this.
I know.
I had a baseball highlight, and I was like,
This is a good story.
13 era in 4K. And they're like, what are you, Chiney, you don't have to say K, you can say strikes. I was like, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Era, by the way, era is ERA.
I know it now. Like, just throw me some Kershaw, anything. I know everything.
Any sport outside the scope of basketball.
Outside of basketball, I didn't know, but that's why, like, the year and a half that I was anchoring SportsCenter Africa, I learned cricket, I learned baseball, I learned football. These were all the silent reps that are necessary. But yeah, I told Jessica, I'm sorry, girl, I didn't know what a K was, I didn't know what era was. I was highly confused and called Lon Rosen. I was like, oh, come on now.
That's my uncle.
But wait, we're interrupting. But we're all just gonna interrupt each other right now. But you said yes. Like, I mean, I just want to stop right there. I mean, she's hosting. So I don't care if it's what it is. I mean, the fact that you're hosting an entire continent, you're bringing sports to Africa, and you've never done it before. You don't know what an ERA, K, but. Like, and I get it. You see this personality, and you're like, okay, she's just gonna go and she's gonna do it. But like, you had to have been scared. Like, there had to have been
totally
fear.
scared. And the thing for me is there was a bigger purpose. And to this day, I'm fortunate to be an NBA analyst and to also like speak on different sports now because all I do is watch NFL Live or Baseball Tonight, like all those things.
That's what you watch?
Well, I do. Yeah, eat, sleep, and breathe. You know how it rolls. You never know when the camera's live and they say, hey, what do you think? But in my perspective, like there's always been a bigger purpose, and this is how I explain things. Like, I've had some dark days with my injuries where I didn't know where my career was gonna go. And I was literally at home in Houston, Texas, but like my parents would go to work, I'd be by myself, and I just was talking about this not too long ago, like a week ago, if it was a week ago. I had my first, ever take on First Take with Stephen A. and Max Kellerman, talking NBA, and it was really surreal for me because about 4 years ago, I was home in Houston, Texas, by myself while my parents were at work, couldn't walk, a swollen left Achilles, and I just literally watched the news and I watched First Take and they just entertained me. And then 4 years later, not knowing where my career would be, and that's where I say being a yes woman is so powerful because I just said yes to opportunities knowing that, you know what, basketball cannot be a 24/7 thing for me. So if it's not, what is gonna be that next step in my career? So fortuitously. And again, I always bring up SportsCenter Africa because I always say what my passions are connected to my identity. Nigerian American, athlete, female, nerd, right? And whatever those opportunities that come my way, I always like, okay, yes, let's see where this goes. And
they don't always come your way, though. A lot of it's proactive.
Yeah.
With Chiney, and sometimes urging me to reach out to the right.
That's like every day. I'm like, girl, why don't you reach out to this person? But long story short, like SportsCenter Africa to this day, like I love NBA analysts' work and stuff like that, but SportsCenter Africa to this day was the most important to me because not only did it give me silent reps where I learned the industry, but for Africa, Africa's a very patriarchal society. My family's Nigerian. I go back to Africa often. For young girls there to have support, like most of the men that watch sports in Africa, they don't think women or girls should be playing sports at all. But guess what? I'm going to sit right in front of you as a female athlete. I'm going to tell you your sports news you need to know, and maybe that'll shift your narrative in your mind and your stereotypes that you have on the continent. And to me, that was the larger purpose. That was bigger than anything. Again, people say, did you want to do broadcasting? I was like, no, I never thought I wanted to. I mean, it works out. It's pretty fun. It's cool. I love it. It's exciting. But like just following my passions and my purpose has brought me to this place where I feel like NBA analysis is great. We work, we prepare, we can do that. Like that's something we know what we can do, but we have a greater purpose as women to be out there to really build up the rising generation. And my scope was not just in the US, it was worldwide because of my family and its heritage.
You want to fast forward to Spark Straight?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Spark Straight. I don't know how we got there from
You got there.
But long story short, so my career was building, and I was really excited to have plenty of opportunities, but I was really losing out on balance in my life. I have 3 sisters. My older sister's just bad butt. I don't know if we can, whatever. She's amazing. I didn't want to say badass, whatever. She's amazing. WNBA champion, WNBA MVP. My little sisters, they balled at Rice. One of them was Conference USA Player of the Year, Conference USA champs. But over the course of the last 3-4 years, I probably had seen them for a total of 1 week. That's how hard I was grinding in Connecticut as an athlete and as a person. And I just lost complete balance, like meaning my family is everything to me. Like growing up, we are all each other's best friends. And so being 27 or so, I was like, I need to create balance in my life. And at this point, it was one thing is gonna have to suffer. For me to be with my family and to understand like that grounding aspect, that could suffer if I, didn't make a move or make a change that could create harmony between both. I didn't want to sacrifice one for the other. And then comes in Allison, who I was like, okay, so this is where we're at. How can we get to where I can live a little bit more optimally? And she was a pit bull. She was fierce, but she had my back throughout the whole process.
I mean, my job, first and foremost, is to advocate for my clients and do what's, ultimately best for them. And so over the course of, I don't know, the last probably 5 months, just
there were situations.
Different things occurred, and Connecticut ultimately did right by Chiney, and really did what ultimately she wanted and what was best for her, both personally and professionally. And so we're eternally, grateful for them. But we talked about it a little bit in the green room, just that my job is to protect my clients and to be the buffer in between their employers that she has. I don't mean that.
But ESPN's great. Like,
yes.
for instance, a good example of this is I was scheduled to work through the NBA playoffs for ESPN, at least through May 11th. But then I get traded. And it's important for me to start, and like even though my sister's on the team and I got a little bit of clout there, it's important for me to show that I'm invested with this new system, new culture. So I needed to be there day 1 of training camp. So that's a week and a half that I had already scheduled to work. Mind you that they already schedule analysts, and not many people go into Connecticut, as NBA analysts. So it sort of puts ESPN in a bind. But once this all happened, there was not one person that said, Chiney, no, this is a problem. They were like, Chiney, we're happy for you. This is good. You're creating balance in your life. We support you. Can you still come to the summit in New York City? I'm like, I got you on that.
Just for the record, she missed training camp today, and they cleared her to allow her to come.
So like the Sparks were cool with me coming here, and ESPN was allowing me to go to training camp. And that's the synergy. And it starts with like having a relationship here that we built and literally shaking hands one by one to know the right people to say, hey guys, this is what's going on. And then we address it.
Can you talk about
Sorry, Jess.
No, it's okay. Oh, over here. No. Question. I think about, and this really hit home for me because this is so true, is obviously being in Bristol is helpful, but you started, like, you come in, cold audition, SportsCenter Africa, and you use that to then kind of see the room. Be like, okay, oh, I get it. So from here, this coordinator or this person, we
talk to the PA and figure out how you're going to build a graphic, how many people are going to talk to you. And one of my best friends here, Kayla Johnson, out here works in social, teach me how to cut a social clip. Like, I just had a natural curiosity for the things that happen behind the scenes, because then when you're producing, you're just like, oh, Chiney, there's a graphic error and there's a package, and by the way, after this, we need you to go live on this. You're like, oh, I understand that. I get what this is coming from. So now it's sort of like, you guys know that GIF with like the numbers and like all that stuff? Like, that's exactly what it feels like is happening. You could be mid-talking when your producer is telling you something and you're having to improvise live. Getting those experiences and seeing that, like me just being curious about how everything works at ESPN behind the scenes, not only helped me foster relationships with people that would say, hey, you know what, Chiney actually gets this. Like, I don't have to ask her to go and, give me a take. She's actually providing plays so that at night, she comes in and we already know exactly what she wants, So just that natural curiosity and building relationships one-on-one helped create some advocates for me internally. But and also it's like, I just love it because women, I've had some struggles on air. Yeah. But you guys, I know, we all know what the struggles have been. So does like 4 million other people on YouTube.
But most people aren't like Chiney, and most talent aren't like Chiney. Most people aren't walking and shaking hands with everybody and asking them about their family and their kids and their dog. I mean, I'll give you a quick anecdote just to explain her personality. I went back to Stanford with her for the first time. She spoke at the Graduate School of Business's sports business conference, basically. And the first thing we did, we went to breakfast with one of her former coaches. And before greeting her former, back of the room to go say hi to the kitchen staff, because that's where she went before practice every day, and she literally made friends with the kitchen staff. Like, this is not a normal human and a normal talent that way. Like, Chiney is the way she acts, even as her career is ascending, on TV, in the WNBA, she's regular, and she's happy to have a conversation with anyone, and there's just not a lot of people like her. I'll gas you up a little bit.
Yeah, chill. It's a middle child thing, you have to fend for yourself. I'm a middle child. And
well, so talk about, I know you referenced your sisters, but growing up in Houston, your parents are from Nigeria. You mentioned the importance of SportsCenter Africa, obviously, as the continent and being a female, but also within Nigeria, the influence even within Houston. Growing up, there wasn't a lot of support. There wasn't a lot of, for women to be playing, going through that, your parents' support, the uniqueness of your own childhood.
Sure. So, I think it's really special when we, are here as a collective, powerful group of women. But that doesn't mean we don't need male allies. And in my life, being Nigerian, it's a very, like I said, macho, patriarchal, type of culture. We have our dad, Peter. It's funny, I always make the joke. Our name's Chinenye Joy, Chinenye, Ifemwa, Nemkadi, Chisom, Erema, and Peter. That's my dad. But my dad, I don't know how to describe it more succinctly than my dad is pretty much in charge of not only our family, but our associated families, his siblings and married siblings, but also our community back home in Nigeria, which is probably up to thousands of people. He's like the head of our household, being the firstborn son. And the expectation within Nigerian culture is that sons need to have sons. You need to carry on the name. Well, we're 4 girls in our family. There's no boys. And that's an area that a lot of people could try to flex, and throw insecurities at my dad. But never, ever in our lifetime has he ever looked to us and said, we can't do something. Never has he felt that he needed a son, because he says, you know what, your sons aren't as good as my daughters. And True. So that but that confidence he gave us allowed us to really feel like we can attack everything we do in life. And and I think Allison shares that same mentality. You share that same mentality. Just the ability of being able to be confident despite who's in front of you. I just think growing up in Houston, especially coming from that culture, and also having a male ally in our dad that told us the world is yours despite who is in front of you, regardless of gender, really just gave us the confidence to be the best version of ourselves. And then obviously I have an amazing big sister. But there were a lot of doubters, for instance, in Nigeria. I remember we were just talking in the green room. Pretty much every Nigerian household of my parents' contemporaries were like, why aren't your daughters in the kitchen cooking and cleaning and helping? Well, that's because they just came from basketball practice and they're making A's and all that stuff and they're tired. Let them chill. But people didn't understand that, and that was back in 2000. Now those same parents are like, oh, let me put my kids in sports and try to get that free scholarship. You know what I mean? So like times have changed, but my parents had the foresight to see the value in sports and how it can create opportunities. They didn't even know scholarships were available, but they saw the values that sports brings. And that was my mom and then my dad, you know, a male ally, and my mom just sort of giving us the confidence to attack the world regardless of who's in front of us. And just being that type of progressive parents to allow us to just do what we want to do. And then I was just saying, like, we didn't expect to be basketball players, and the next thing you know, we're in the WNBA. And I remember on my draft night, I just looked to NECA and we're like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, our lives had transformed and we never expected it. And it was just like 10 years, so.
How do you identify with yourself? Because I feel like you still, and obviously with your name and everything like about you, there's still the cultural influence that you'll have and carry with you with Nigeria, your parents being from there, but then there's also so much in front of you that you are doing now, future-wise. So what do you identify as? Like, how do you?
I always say I'm a Nigerian American female athlete and nerd. And like, what if there's a passion that's in that alignment, which is like the essence of who I am, I'm all about it. And the same way she says 5'8", right, and Jewish, like that's her, culture is a big part of her life. And you know, she's passionate about it, but then she's also an athlete as well. Like, so we have that mentality and we don't, yeah, former, retired.
Thank you.
But yeah, I guess I identify myself as that, but like I just think it's that, like we always talk about, if there's one word that describes us, it's hustle. Like it's that mental hustle that we have to never settle. And I think as women, we need that hustle. And that hustle becomes our biggest strength because, you know, my job is to bring NBA analysis, and there are a lot of dudes in the NBA, no offense, but that might say things that might get carried away. You know, like, oh, Paul Pierce, I'm better than D-Wade, or something like that. You know, those type of things. But like in those situations, like I know whatever I say, I'm gonna bring my 100%, you know, energy towards it. And that's because we have no choice but to do that, because what do they say? To get just as far, you have to like work twice as hard to get just as far. Like
yeah.
we can't just waste an opportunity.
My last question for both of you, and I know there's like 20 seconds, and there's zero chance that you'll get that in 20, but like that's fine. No, it's good.
That's
like
a fact.
And this is something selfishly, like I want to know, because I feel like it's hard sometimes to market. And this is unbelievable. You look at Chiney and you're like, this is the easiest person in the world to market. But I found that when you don't fit into a box, like it's almost easier, like I am just WNBA player. I am just ESPN. Like when you cover a bunch of different things and you have this dynamic, it can be harder to get companies, corporations, different people to say, yes, let's put that. What challenges have you guys faced, and then how do you navigate just being you and knowing there is no blueprint? Like there is no other you.
You know what I love? What makes my job, like being an NBA analyst, the hardest was the fact that people didn't necessarily know me or my story. They saw my name. It's like Chiney Ogwumike, like what? You know, a whole bunch of letters. But I love that. I really do love that, because they didn't really know who I was. They didn't know I was a WNBA player per se, because they're NBA, you know, guys. That's all the male sports fans understand. But that meant I have the opportunity to win them over with my brain, you know? And one thing I always tell people is that as a female, they see you before they hear you. And the best thing for me was realizing when they started to hear me. And when they heard me, they're like, dang, she really knows her stuff. You know what I mean? And that to me was the best validation. So being a relative unknown, so say I'm going to a company, they don't know much about me. Next thing you know, they see what I'm bringing to the table, which is what everyone should be bringing to the table. But as women, we understand we got to bring that A+++ game. That to me is the ultimate source of gratification, knowing NBA fans, you know, like, Chiney, you are so solid on your analysis. I'm like, thank you. That means you're not just seeing me, you're hearing me. You're hearing a woman. And by nature of that, you might support the WNBA. And by nature of that, you might support young girls everywhere. Like, it's that trickle-down effect.
So to answer your question, Chiney is the epitome of disrupt the game, not to quote my company name, but she really...
You totally did that, shameless plug.
That's okay. But basically, I mean, she is doing what no one thought was possible. She stays up all night to watch NBA games on the East Coast, and then gets up at 4 in the morning to go sit in her makeup chair by 5:30, 6 a.m. and go, you know, give an NBA analysis on SportsCenter. Like, she literally, I mean, we talked about it, I guess, outworking and hustling and all that. My job is to put that in front of people, right, and help explain it. And the best way, I mean, Chiney alluded to it also, is just we've met a lot of people, and we shake hands with a lot of people, and the more people that meet Chiney and hear her story and understand what she's doing on a day-to-day basis, that, I mean, to me, that's what separates her from anybody else. And that is ultimately falls on me of how to disseminate that to people. And not everybody knows who Chiney is. Now it's a little bit easier than it was before, but I think the more people we meet is just the better.
And to answer the question for her, which she answered it for me, and how many clients do you have now?
That's a good question.
I mean,
Probably
like
around 15.
Around 15. She's just as motivated for me as she is for other clients, and that to me is like number one on the list. Someone willing to fight, go to war with you the same way we did on the court. Well, not.
Thank you guys. What a team. Seriously.
Hey, there we go.
You guys are crazy.
We
Hot
totally are.
mess,
Hot
all
mess.
of it, but you're kicking ass. So, all right. Thank you guys.